I mean, I don't know whether ChatGPT will prove to be so awful, so conspicuously awful to teachers and students that we'll throw up our hands and say, goodness sakes, we can't proceed this way anymore. Let's go back to basics. Maybe, but I mean, there are several problems here. First of all, in order to teach students how to read, you need to have people who know how to read. Now, let's just take it as a hypothesis. You and I know how to read because we're of a certain age. But already, I mean, we've got people coming through, students now, some of them, or maybe many of them. It's hard for me to figure it out. I know 2012 is the date that Jonathan Haidt and others have said, anxiety and mental health and so forth all went downhill because kids were using smartphones, et cetera. But how long is it going to take for this awakening to occur? And will there still be sufficient teachers who actually know how to read? But let me go back to something else you were saying about the importance of reading. It's true that, if we're just generating tweets and we're sort of reading stuff that comes across our social media, what's happening is that we're using words in a very different way than, say, Homer, right? Words have, first of all, lost their specificity, because if you're not used to reading good books, you're not going to be very attuned to the differences, the nuances in different terms, and I'm sure you're like me when I'm writing and painstaking and I'm thinking, here's a word, it does the job, but there's something else that might be better and so forth, right? So you sort of lose that capability. In many cases, words become simply personal expression, right? Or you're going on LinkedIn, and I don't even know the names of all these things. Instagram, okay, let's say to communicate something about yourself. Here's a news update, right? Or they're sort of political tokens, right? Because we're now distinguished by what language we're using and so forth. What are the words of the Odyssey? What are the words of the Hebrew Scripture? Well, these are deep things, and they're currents flowing deep in the water, right? And when you learn to read, you think about them, and you run into passages that are opaque, and so you cast your line into the water, and you're sort of fishing, and all of a sudden you feel a tug, right? And it's this strike of meaning, and you haul it up. That's what real reading is. That's when you begin to understand the depth that is contained in speech and in the word. That, I think, is not an experience that as many people today have as let's say 100, 200 years ago, when books were much scarcer. But I dare say they were better on the whole, like the King James Bible or something like that. Lincoln could give addresses in which he's referring to biblical things, and he knows that pretty much everyone who's going to hear this thing knows what he's referring to, right? Because this is a part of the fabric of our existence. That's not being replaced by Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. And now I'm out of words because I don't know any of those other platforms.